If Tennessee loses to Florida, and we wouldn't know exactly how, whose job should be on the line, Caleb? And that could be a starting job. That could be a coach that, sure, he's still in the staff, and you're not going to escort him out of gate 20, but maybe has less of a role. That's essentially what happened to Chuck Smith when they ran 38,000 defensive tackles onto the field at Tiger Stadium. He lost all of his duties, all of them. They were all handled by Lance Thompson. He was in charge of substituting the defensive line just like he was the linebackers. Usually that falls on the position coach. So I think you have to wonder about Joey Halzle. Now, again, we're not talking about some sort of public firing or anything like that. But whose job should be on the line if the Vols lose to Florida?
Just funny thing for that Chuck Smith thing. I think every Les Miles check from that point on, a cut of it should have been taxed and gone to Chuck Smith, because Les Miles was going to be fired on Monday if LSU lost that game with that clock mismanagement. But I would say, okay, let's set it this way. One of the tackles, Joey Halzle.
Okay.
Nico or Josh Heupel.
Well, I mean,
okay, let's talk about Josh Heupel. Glenn Ellerbe. We got to start raising some red flags on Glenn Ellerbe with the offensive line.
Okay. I like that. Now, what would your answer be to that question?
Glenn Ellerbe. I think there is a major issue with player development under Glenn Ellerbe right now that I don't think we're talking about enough. And
well, we are. I don't know that everybody is. All right, so I got John Campbell Jr. or Lance Hurd, then offensive line coach Glenn Ellerbe, Joey Halzle,
and Nico.
Okay, it's not Nico,
but you got to throw him in there because people might blame him.
No, he's on there. It's not Nico because it's what is happening in front of him that is so troublesome. It is John Campbell Jr. or Lance Hurd. And I say that knowing that it could have a negative effect on team chemistry. But if Tennessee goes out there and their offensive tackles played like they did against Arkansas, then I'm going to maybe drop Glenn Ellerbe a hint that maybe his services are more in need elsewhere. I'm going to drop a hint to Joey Halzle that this isn't working out. Now, that doesn't mean you have a press conference and fire them on the spot on Monday. No, you've still got a lot to play for, even if Tennessee were to lose. But you're right. I think that just to say John Campbell or Lance Hurd is the easy way out, because there is, it appears to me and us and Mike Stoll, who played offensive line for Tennessee and was one of the guys that really had to rely on technique more so than physical ability. So he really believes in his craft, and I think he's right up there at the top. So I would have to say this has to go more towards a coach in Halzle or especially Ellerbe. Thanks for the super chat, Darth Ball, as that'll go to Caleb Calhoun's 4-month-old son's college savings. He said, I'm not sure if we even have anyone behind Hurd as Campbell that could do any better, nor is Nico's backup any better. So offensive line coach it is. All right. Well, again, I said this earlier in the week, and it was not based off a source. It was based off of just my view of football. I thought that Lance Hurd was heavy-footed and that if Dane Davis focused on one position, he could be as good. Now we have seen my opinion backed up, and I didn't talk to Ollie about this before, but he offered it up, Caleb, that maybe that's the direction to go. And I said this originally, I think even last week, that if Dane Davis is prepared at just one position, I don't think there's a major fall off.
I actually agree. I think that particularly this day and age, I think technique is more important to playing left tackle, whereas raw talent's more important to playing right tackle. And I think we can agree Dane Davis has been in the program long enough. He probably has technique and his fundamentals down pat. And Larry Johnson probably has the raw talent. So look, guys, we said John Campbell or Lance Hurd. I'm not saying you shouldn't bench both. Now, I think with Lance Hurd, it could just be some issues with his style. I don't think John Campbell is not a good player. He could be banged up. He played a really good defensive end last week, guys. One of the best he's going to face all year.
Well, he has that versus sack issue that keeps flaring up during the game. I'm not completely blaming him. I mean, I think he's doing it on 1.5 legs.
Yeah. And at that point, if he is, then you put Larry Johnson out there. I mean, let him get fully healthy. And I mean, I that's the way I look at it. I think Larry Johnson has proven enough. Now, again, we see things in practice, or we don't see things in practice. They do. We question coaches all the time. That's what we love to do on this show. But there are sometimes decisions that are made based on their understanding of personnel. And maybe Larry Johnson can come in for a couple of plays and play well like he's done. But Josh Heupel seen enough in practice to say, well, he can't do that for 4 quarters the way we expect other tackles to be able to do so. And so that's kind of where we're at. But I mean, I will say, Dave, you covered practice with Philip Fulmer all the time. And I can tell you many Tennessee fans in the background would always be complaining about Fulmer's personnel decisions. And now I look back and you've enlightened me on some things and you're like, you don't understand in practice. That's why they made that decision because of things like that.
I'll give you another one too, just in how football has changed. Elijah Simmons, you would be a first-round draft pick if they had been allowed to move you to the offensive line years ago. And that used to happen under Philip Fulmer's regime all the time. Now it doesn't happen hardly ever. And it's because I think that a lot of these players, they have leverage because of the transfer portal. He get up and say, I'm not going to leave. Now, I know he was here before even the transfer portal, but it just doesn't seem like people are willing to do that nearly as often, Caleb. But I look at Elijah Simmons, and to me, he is a dominant, awesome offensive guard.
Yes, he is. He also is starting to blow up plays in the middle of tackle. He's actually underrated with what he's doing at tackle right now. And
no, I agree. A lot of times those often injured guys, they're more likely to get caught up on defense with guys rolling up on them.
But guard's not a problem for Tennessee anyway.
Oh, I agree. I got way off topic. Ray Varner, local you trust, innovation you can afford. Go to rayvarnerford.com, rayvarnerford.com. Yes, Caleb?
Yeah, I was just going to say that Elijah Simmons I think Tennessee's just going to have to make some personnel changes at tackle, but we really got to start questioning Glenn Ellerbe.
Now, if that's the case, some of that falls under Josh Heupel, because if they have the same problems at offensive tackle, then he hasn't done anything in terms of 12 personnel, or he hasn't done anything in terms of chipping with a running back. I mean, if they're still getting beat at offensive tackle and that cost them the Florida game, some of that's on Heupel.
Oh, absolutely it is. Totally agree.